Hey, it's Zane here and welcome back. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I'm going to respond to some feedback I've had recently to a few videos. I've been talking a lot about Bitcoin recently. I care a lot about the state of the financial system and the impact it's having on many people. And a lot of people know there's problems, but they can't quite put their finger on why it is that we have a cost of living crisis, a housing crisis, a growing wealth gap. If you're like me and you've got kids in their, 20s or maybe teens, and you're wondering about the prospect of them being able to live the great Australian dream or the great American dream to own their own home and have a family, all of these things now are a real serious issue and consideration that perhaps a generation ago we didn't have to worry too much about. And I believe that a lot of this has to do with the fact that, we have a system now of broken money that has gotten way out of hand. Essentially, we have a debt-based system that really is a house of cards. As Michael Saylor says, everything is credit except Bitcoin, which is real money. And so credit is issued to, keep the debt system alive, which is essentially to ensure that everything doesn't collapse. So they have to keep printing money to create more debt, in order to demonetize the existing debt. And so the only way they can demonetize the existing debt is to create more inflation by creating more debt. And eventually this system has to implode. I mean, it can't last forever, but what we're seeing is the effects of the debt-based system now more than ever, because really since 2020, this whole system has really been put into overdrive. And so this is the time now where you and I have to be thinking very much outside the box. We need to be thinking laterally in terms of our financial future. Unfortunately, financial planners and the financial planning industry, certainly in this country, is still not yet recommending Bitcoin to their clients because they're not licensed to do so. And of course, they're only going to do things that are within the jurisdiction of their licensing. But meanwhile, they're shortchanging their clients because we have this incredible supercharged best performing asset sitting over here called Bitcoin, which is outpacing everything else to the tune of 8-9 times per year. And yet they're not recommending it to their clients because they're not licensed to do so. And so that really means that you and I, if we are locked in a system that's generating 8, 9, 10% return, which once upon a time was okay, when inflation, true inflation, was sitting at around 3, 4, 5%. But now we have true inflation when you take into account quantitative easing and monetary expansion, and you see that now true inflation is sitting at somewhere between 15 and 20%. It means that if you're doing a portfolio or in a portfolio that's generating 8, 9, 10%, then essentially it's like being out at sea in a small dinghy or a boat that has a hole in it, and your financial future is slowly sinking to the bottom. And so this is why I teach about Bitcoin. It's why I run webinars, and I have people who come along and I share with them not just why Bitcoin exists, but also, a lot of the problems with the monetary system, a little bit of history, because the reality is most people are busy and they're not paying attention. Not because they're silly, it's just because most people just don't have time. And even though they know there's a problem, they have no idea where to start. But I just implore people to take a little time to start learning about Bitcoin. And so I just want to focus on a couple of aspects in relation to Bitcoin now that you may not realize, but like I said, I've had some comments recently, people wanting to who are new to Bitcoin and wanting me to delve a little bit deeper into the technical aspects of it. Personally, I'm not highly technical myself. It's just not my attachment to Bitcoin. I know enough to know that it works, the system works, buying Bitcoin works, sending it to a hardware wallet works, transferring it to another hardware wallet, all of that stuff works. I'm fully comfortable with that process. So for me, the technical engineering behind Bitcoin is not an area I spend a lot of time. But having said that, I do understand the basics. So I'll just take a couple of minutes here in this video to try and share a little of what I know with you and kind of take it for what it's worth. But I definitely encourage you to jump down that rabbit hole further if it's something of interest to you, and you'll learn more. But essentially, we have to realize that baked into the cake, baked into the protocol, the Bitcoin protocol, is what's known as a 4-year halving cycle. And essentially, every 4 years, the Bitcoin supply essentially is impacted by a supply shock. Now, what I mean by that is we know that baked into the Bitcoin protocol, there will only ever be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoin. And each Bitcoin has a derivative or fractional number of units known as Satoshis. And there's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. And so that's the first thing to understand. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And there are 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin, making it highly fractional, which basically means you can buy fractions of a Bitcoin down to, as little as, $5-10. And so there's really no excuse for anybody who understands what Bitcoin is and wants to jump into this and I guess go on a Bitcoin journey, use it as a savings technology. You can get involved at any level. So that's the first thing to understand. The next thing to realize is that every 4 years, the miners, the way that Bitcoin is created, every 10 minutes there's a block of Bitcoin created. And back in January 2009, the first block of Bitcoin was created by the anonymous figure known as Satoshi Nakamoto, who nobody's ever met, and who essentially gifted this protocol to the universe as a solution to all of the pitfalls of central banking. And it's interesting to note that the Bitcoin protocol was kind of released on the back of the global financial crisis, when you consider that Lehman Brothers went down in September 2008, which of course led to the cascading effect, the global financial crisis. And then out of the blue, here comes this new protocol that's released to a small forum of cryptographers 1 month later. And then, in October 2008, and then, of course, in January 2009, the first block of Bitcoin was mined. And at that time, every 10 minutes, there was 50 Bitcoin released every 10 minutes. And over the course of 4 years, that release or that supply that is issued to the market, and remembering that Bitcoin essentially is created by a number of computers that are all competing to solve a complex algorithm, a complex computer problem, which takes a lot of computer energy to actually solve that problem. And then the Bitcoin are created, so every 10 minutes. So every 4 years, the supply or the reward that miners receive for mining new blocks of Bitcoin is cut in half. So we went from 50 Bitcoin in the first cycle to 25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes in the second cycle, to 12.5 Bitcoin every 10 minutes in the third cycle, to 6.25 in the fourth, and now we're in the fifth cycle and it's at 3.125 Bitcoin being released to the market through this process of mining every 10 minutes. And if you extrapolate that out over 24 hours, that's 450 new Bitcoin being released to the market every single 24 hours. So each day there's 450 Bitcoin right now for the next 4 years being released. Well, actually the next 3 years, because the Bitcoin halving event from this cycle actually took place last May. And so we have a deflationary technology where there's a supply shock every 4 years, and essentially we have a diminishing rate of supply that is issued to the market over time. Remembering that the absolute hard cap total amount of Bitcoin that will ever be mined is 21 million. The other thing to realize is that we've already mined, or not we, but Bitcoin miners, there is something like just over 95%, I believe, I don't know the exact figure, but somewhere around 95% of Bitcoin has already been mined since 2009. And so already the bulk of Bitcoin that will ever be mined is already out there. And so over the next 100 years, the next 5% will be mined. However, there's about 3.5% of that, I believe, that will be mined within the next 10 years. It's just how the protocol works, and if you want to do the maths on it, you'll soon see that that's essentially how it all works when you start plugging it into a calculator. But the bulk of the Bitcoin's already here, and the good news is about 70% of that Bitcoin is in the hands of individuals, private wallets. Bitcoin was created as a bottom-up technology. So for the first time in history, the people had access to front-running institutions, to front-running Wall Street, to front-running governments. And so the people have been able to adopt and learn about and embrace this monetary technology, and I guess position themselves with this digital scarcity before the big players, before the big money comes in. And of course, in January last year, we had the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC in America, finally approve a Bitcoin ETF. So essentially regulatory clarity was provided just over 12 months ago. So now that Wall Street, the likes of Blackrock, who are the biggest fund managers on earth, they can now recommend Bitcoin via this ETF, via this derivative of Bitcoin. They can now recommend Bitcoin to their clients and give their clients exposure to the best performing asset on earth. And so it's only been 12 months or so that this has been the case. Now, right now in Australia, my understanding is that the financial planning industry here has still not received access to that. So in other words, the financial planners are not recommending yet Bitcoin to their clients, but I believe it's only a matter of time before that will take place. And so back to step number 2. Step number 1 is to understand that Bitcoin is inherently deflationary and the supply deteriorates over time, which creates a supply shock every 4 years, about 12 months after the halving cycle, like I said, which actually happened in May last year. Around this time, this is when the Bitcoin price historically tends to take off. And so we're sitting now at somewhere between $95,000 US and $100,000 US. The Bitcoin price has been hovering around there for the last couple of months, and it's usually very, very soon from here historically that the Bitcoin price starts to leg up and starts to take off. And so this is why it's a really good time to position yourself if you believe in Bitcoin. But I guess I just want to finish with just explaining too that if you just choose to actually buy Bitcoin, I definitely recommend that you choose a reputable exchange. There's a number of those in Australia. There's a number of those in the US and Canada. So really important that you buy Bitcoin from a regulated exchange. But the most important thing is to actually secure your Bitcoin. Bitcoin is sovereign money. Bitcoin is freedom money. Bitcoin is an asset that has no counterparty involvement once you actually take private custody of it. And this is what makes Bitcoin such a potent asset, because it gives you the ability to have your wealth totally portable. And so long as you have access to the seed phrase or the keys that essentially authenticate the ownership of your Bitcoin to you, then you can take your Bitcoin anywhere. So you can memorize the 12 seed phrase, or you can write it down on a piece of paper and store it in a safe place if you're not good with memory. But essentially, it enables you to teleport or to mobily transport your wealth with you, whatever you have off the exchanges and secured in your sole private custody in your hardware device. It gives you the opportunity to take that Bitcoin with you wherever you go. And so a lot of people don't realize that when you send Bitcoin off the exchange into your private wallet, the Bitcoin itself is not actually secured on the device. So the Bitcoin never actually leaves the blockchain. It stays on the in cyberspace on the immutable ledger, but it is verified as yours, authenticated by your private key. And that is secured by a seed phrase. And when you buy a wallet, and there are many different wallets out there available, Bitcoin hardware wallets, I'll do another video on the Bitcoin hardware wallet that I recommend. I recently changed my choice, and there's reasons for that, but I'll do that in another video. But just realize that when you secure your Bitcoin, what you're actually securing is your keys to the vault on the blockchain. And so the Bitcoin essentially is housed on the blockchain, but as it is transferred to you, provided you have the keys to access that Bitcoin stays on the blockchain and essentially belongs to you. And so that is kind of where I want to leave it today. But I think just making the point that new Bitcoin are created every 10 minutes. It's a deflationary protocol where the supply gets cut in half every 4 years. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Bitcoin is highly fractional, so you can get involved at any level. And you can secure Bitcoin in lump sums, in big amounts, or you can do it in small amounts. You can set it up as a savings technology where you allocate a portion of your income on a fortnightly or a weekly or a monthly basis to it. And then as you have access to spare cash that you know you don't need in the short term, you can just park it there, knowing that you're secured in the best performing asset for the past 7 years. And so that's why I encourage people to learn about Bitcoin. Most people delay in taking action because they feel like they've got to do all the research first before they actually get involved and buy it. And I really recommend that you just learn enough to feel confident that what you're doing is the right thing, and to put a little bit in, to feel comfortable, watch the process, getting it from your bank to an exchange, buying the Bitcoin, and then securing the Bitcoin into a hardware wallet. And then once you've done that, that'll give you the confidence to go to the next step, and then the next step. And this is exactly what I did. And so, you don't have to give away the farm. You don't have to, bet your whole life on Bitcoin. You can just allocate a small amount, and then as you get confident, just add more as you see fit. But Bitcoin's not going anywhere. There's a lot happening globally right now that I think is going to make it more and more difficult in the coming months and years for people to secure a really good position in Bitcoin. I believe the risk return associated with Bitcoin is better now than it's ever been, the proposition, because now we have regulatory clarity. We have Wall Street involved. We have institutions buying up Bitcoin now like there's no tomorrow. We have the US government now with a favorable Bitcoin administration that are working very hard behind the scenes to propose what they've termed a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And once all of this happens and these announcements are made, there's going to be a rush to Bitcoin like you've never seen before. And of course, when you've got a fixed supply asset that is absolutely scarce and you've got demand coming in from all corners of the globe, what do you think is going to happen to the price? So we all understand basic economics 101, supply and demand. And this is why I say, if you've heard a little bit about Bitcoin, you now need to lean in and start learning really about it, and just learn enough to know that this is the future, and come in at a level you're comfortable with, watch the process, and then go from there. So I hope you got some value from today's video. A little longer than I thought it would go, but I love talking about Bitcoin. I love sharing. I love helping people develop the confidence and the clarity to move forward, because I believe we're at a time now where we need to be financially self-responsible, self-empowered, because unfortunately the system is not doing the right thing by us, and so we've got to do things on our own now. That's my belief. I hope that resonates with you. And just remember that when you plug your life into Bitcoin, when you live on a Bitcoin standard, life only gets better. I want to thank you for listening. Please like this video if you got value. Leave me a comment. I'd love to hear it if you want me to clarify or elaborate on something in a future video. And please subscribe. I'm wanting to build this community, and just encourages me to keep showing up and to share what I know with you. Thanks for listening. This is Zane signing out. I'll see you in the next one.